Hi, I'm Mr. Most Days Off. You might remember me from such podcasts as our review of Some Enchanted Evening and our season finale spectaculars. I brought a friend along with me today to talk to you about an exciting new product.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Richie the Whiz Kid.
Miles, did you know that most people have no idea how to get a Best Darn Diddly t-shirt?
You can get a t-shirt with a podcast logo on it? I had no idea.
If you go to tpublic.com/bestdarndiddly, you'll find not only t-shirts, but also Best Darn Diddly hoodies, posters, mugs, and even phone and laptop cases. It's like they'll put their names on anything. And Miles, did you know that all the Best Darn Diddly products are also inflammable?
Richie, that means they catch on fire.
I had no idea.
Help support the Best Darn Diddly Review Show by buying our stuff at tpublic.com/bestdarndiddly. And do try to stay away from open flames.
Bye, everybody.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. This is a weekly podcast for anyone who loves The Simpsons or ever has loved The Simpsons, hosted by two dudes that grew up on The Simpsons. My name is Miles, better known as Mr. Most Days Off, and today we are going back to school with Homer Goes to College. And appropriately so, as that's where we met. Joining me, as always, your co-host with the most, Richie the Whiz Kid. How you doing today, Rich?
To be fair, though, we did not meet playing Dungeons and Dragons.
We met playing volleyball, that's true.
We were definitely the jocks in college.
I wouldn't go that far.
Not really at all. But yes,
in like stoner or what is that? Not recreational. Fuck. What is the shit you do in college? Intramural. We were intramural jocks. We did a lot of that stuff. But yeah, we were not like the best.
We won a
athletes.
tournament, sir. We won Deuce Bigelow, Male Gigolo 2 visors because we were so good at volleyball.
That's true.
Which I still don't know why that was the promotional gift. I figured they went somewhere and that they just got all that for free and they thought, we can use this.
That's literally what happened, dude. They like took the real prize and they're like, yeah, we went to see this shitty movie last night and we got this crappy visor, so we'll just give it to these freshmen who ever win these tournaments.
Didn't those say like get hoeing too or something? It was something you couldn't wear anywhere. But anyways, we got a lot to talk about today. Maybe not, I don't know. Let's see how I feel about the episode as we go. But I don't want to give anything away just yet. For now, I'll throw it back to you. The man, the myth, the secretary of partying down.
Woo-hoo!
It is Miles.
So, I will just go ahead and declare straight out, I am very fond of this episode. I was laughing pretty much all the way through. We'll go ahead and start at the beginning. First thing I noticed, I'm sure you did, for the first time in a long time, we had shortened credits, meaning that this might actually be a show that was running on the long side. And as I mentioned in part 1, I believe, of our show with Carolyn Omine, this was actually the first show written by the season 5 staff. The first 2 episodes played the Homer's Barbershop Quartet and Cape Fear were both holdovers from season 4. This was actually the first episode truly produced by the season 5 staff. And already it's going long. It did not have a chalk gag, and the couch gag was a very quick giant foot coming down and stomping on the entire Simpsons family.
You know, I'm glad you said that this is the first one with the new showrunners, because I honestly completely forgot that part. And it kind of, like, now thinking back to the episode, it kind of makes sense. You can see a little slight change in things. For me, this is one of those episodes that was, you know, in between the halfway point and the end on, like, how much I liked it. Like, it wasn't on the bottom half, it was on the top half. It was more like 75% of the way on the 0 to 100 scale. And I feel like it kind of stayed along those lines. There's certain parts of the episode that I feel aren't as funny as I remembered them being, especially when he's actually with the nerds, like, trying to get them to do stuff. And there's definitely parts where I'm like, damn it, Homer, like, why do you have to be such an ass? Because, of course, Homer always causes issues he shouldn't have, but for understandable reasons in the long run. But anyways, this isn't one of those where I'm going to agree with you where it's like, this is the best episode ever. This will not be on my top 5 at the end of the season. I can say that.
Oh, this one will definitely be a contender for me. I'm also going to go ahead and point out that this is the last episode that Conan O'Brien will get full or individual writing credits for. He has partial credit on the Treehouse of Horror Part 4 that'll be coming up in just a couple episodes, but this was the last full episode that he will have ever written for the show.
for the most part, I really like all the episodes he's been involved with, like, for sure. And when we've learned about his little input on certain episodes, I feel like he's been a much bigger contributor to The Simpsons than I initially remembered as when I was younger.
Absolutely. There's a lot of really interesting things happening with Conan Bryan during the production of this episode, but let's go ahead and get into the episode a little bit first before we get into that. We open up with Homer napping on the job, but I love the way they do this because they actually have it in this very like folksy style where it's the Simpsons theme, but it has a twang to it. And Homer's actually napping with pretty much, yeah. Homer's napping with a hound dog sleeping by his feet, and then it pans over and you see Lenny's actually laying in a hammock, but he's being rocked by machines, so it's kind of a hybrid. Of course, in typical why the fuck would they design it that way fashion,
yes,
there's this giant red button that says plant destruct. Please do not push, right in the middle of Homer's desk. And as he's sleeping, he essentially collapses onto this button and almost causes the first of many core meltdowns that he's going to cause in this episode. But fortunately, his faithful hound dog that we'll never see again is there to save the day.
And there's a button to do the self-destruct, but there's a switch the dog actually grabs with its mouth and pulls down to keep the self-destruct from happening. So why wouldn't you just hit the button a second time?
Right? They actually carry this joke on a bit further in a very funny way. We pan through Mr. Burns' monitor where we saw Homer napping on the job to where Mr. Burns is actually napping on the job. And as it backs off, you can look and see on all the monitors, all of the employees are napping. And even better, Mr. Smithers is curled up like a dog at Mr. Burns' feet, complete with a little bit of a leg kick and many howls as he's apparently having a great dream while he's sleeping by his boss or master.
I do love the shot of all the monitors where everyone's sleeping in the background behind him. It's just a really subtle... It makes the scene a lot funnier. It wouldn't be as funny if it was just Homer and Burns. And this is an episode where I said, it's about 75% up on my scale, but the Mr. Burns stuff in this one, as usual, is really high up and really funny and well done.
Yes, Burns is hilarious in this episode in every scene he's involved in, especially one we'll get to later at the boardroom, but we won't get out of order. We'll save it. We'll save it. Burns is sleeping, but there is a buzz at his door.
What? How dare you disturb me during nap time?
We're from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. This is a surprise test of workers' competence.
There must be some kind of mistake. We make, cookies here. Mr. Burns' old-fashioned good
Get
time.
the axe.
Extra chewy.
The commission actually breaks down the door, and Burns is sitting there worried, but Smithers took care of it. It's okay. He arranged to hide the less gifted employees in the nuclear power plant's basement out of the way from the competency test, and we then pan to the basement where we see Homer and two dimwits sitting around a jar in the basement.
Homer, why are we down here?
Ah, geez, I told you, Bernie, to guard the bee.
But why?
You guys are pathetic. No wonder Smithers made me head bee guy. Homer leans back and he puts his feet up, knocking the jar containing the bee they're supposedly supposed to be guarding this entire time, and of course the bee is set free.
Oh no, we did bad.
Homer goes chasing the bee down the very, very dangerous hallway. You can see nuclear waste and just green slime and broken pipes everywhere.
Nuclear, damn it!
I just do it to drive you crazy, buddy.
Even as the nuclear inspector, you made him mispronounce nuclear. He's not very good at his job. It's in his damn title.
So, meanwhile, up on the, I guess, in the parking lot is where it's happening. They're conducting this competency test, and when they ask if Homer Simpson is available, Smithers says, "Oh, I'm sorry, but he couldn't be here."
But
I love actually Burns and Smithers both start doing this sinister laugh, but then Burns kind of gets a little out of it. He's like, "Oh, he's in Geneva attending a conference."
Yes, that should stick.
And just then, Homer bursts from this manhole cover in the parking lot, yelling, "Ow! The bee bit my bottom, and now my bottom's big." Oh my goodness, that line cracks me up. I'm going to go ahead and point out real quick on the director's commentary. It was actually quite a full staff. They had Matt Groening, new showrunner Dave Merkin, Jim Brooks, Jim Reardon, the director, David Silverman, and they had Conan O'Brien, though he was via telecom. He was basically over an internet connection. He wasn't actually live in studio, but he was still there doing commentary.
In 1993?
This was the commentary was done in 2004, so it's actually a little bit old at this point, but still really funny stuff. In fact, that's the problem when Conan joins the commentary team. It's often hilarious, but unfortunately, it doesn't tend to have as many of the fun facts that I usually like to share on this show. So there were a little bit of lacking in that, but I did crack up because Conan was making fun of the education level of all the people in the room that came up with the line, "The bee bit my bottom and now my bottom's big." That's like a bunch of Ivy League degrees coming up with that shit right there.
If it works, sell it.
Hey, if it works, it works, right? Who cares how mature the joke is?
Well, and we all know Conan will use many jokes like that throughout his career, even today. So, I mean, I think it's safe to say we know he's being super sarcastic.
Exactly, yeah. He's very clearly a very, very smart comedian. I mean, he's had a career now for a very long time.
I love Conan. It's the only late night show I watch when I have time to watch it when I'm not at work, but he always cracks me up. The best things he does, I think, is when he takes the show to other countries and actually tapes the show in the other country and goes through their culture and just makes Americans look stupid and just overreacts to everything. Like, he does great when he's out in the masses.
I have not watched Conan recently or even in quite some time, honestly, but in the late 90s and early 2000s, I never missed an episode. I watched his show every single night. Things like in the year 2000, I used to absolutely love, and a lot of his silly bits, especially when he had Andy Richter on the show. Those two were...
Andy's been his co-host since he went to TBS years
ago. Oh,
ago.
right on. That's really cool. But yeah, those two were always so great together. Since you brought it up, I'll go ahead and drop a little bit of the knowledge that was revealed in the director's commentary.
Knowledge?
Yeah, exactly. A lot of the negotiations for Conan taking over for Letterman were actually happening during this episode, during the production of this episode. And it wasn't made official till way late. So, I mean, he's still very involved with the production and everything. But Conan actually ended up breaking his contract eventually to go and take that job. He was still supposed to be on staff for The Simpsons. And keep in mind, The Simpsons staff was going through a tumultuous time because of all the changes that were happening. The majority of the staff from season 4 was gone, and David Reardon was now putting together a new crew. And he actually said at the time, Conan was his rock. So when he left the show unexpectedly, it really jarred the staff in a lot of ways. But fortunately, everybody was able to come together. And as we know, they ended up getting some incredibly great episodes after Conan's departure. While he was a great contribution to the staff, I'm really happy to know that it wasn't just him carrying the entire thing, because clearly the rest of the Simpsons writers knew what they were doing, because from seasons 5 and on, just off the top of our heads, I know a bunch of the episodes that we consider our favorites are ahead of us.
Well, and it's good to know that things worked out for both sides, too. Like, it's not like Conan left and then his career didn't take off and the Simpsons writers failed miserably. They've both had moderate success since...
I would say more than moderate success. They both had huge amounts of success since they split with one another, totally. And I will say that it's a good thing for Conan, because I'm pretty sure he got a pretty hefty fine from the Fox network for breaking that contract.
Probably.
But back to the episode for now. Homer showed up at the exact wrong time to skip that test, and he was in fact going to have to sit down in a replica of his own workstation, and they were going to set it as if a core meltdown was occurring in Sector 7G. Now, Homer, this is an exact replica of your workstation. Now we're going to simulate a power surge in Sector 8.
What the hell are you talking about?
Relax, it's just a simulator. Nothing can go wrong.
Just poke blindly at controls until they let you go.
And then the van has an actual meltdown. And the funny part about this, of course, is there is absolutely no nuclear material on the van to cause the meltdown. But somehow Homer managed to cause the entire thing to start glowing bright green and actually melt through the asphalt in the parking lot.
I like when the alarms start going off when it cuts back into Burns' office where Burns is trying to get in the escape pod.
For the love of God, sir, there are 2 seats!
He closes the door as Smithers is running up, and then Smithers yells that, and Burns says, I like to put my feet up.
And he slams the fucking pod door in Smithers' face. That's so wrong.
But then the pod crashes.
Kind of gets what's coming to him, because the pod fails and goes bouncing down the street, with Mr. Burns, like, groaning with every hit. The cherry on top of this whole scene is when Homer crawls out of the hole that was melted into the ground. He's glowing green, and he's saying things like, death to all of mankind.
Must destroy mankind.
Beep, beep.
Woohoo, lunchtime.
And Homer then literally shakes it off is the best part. Like, he just does like a little shimmy, and all of the green just kind of goes away from him. Really, really funny.
I just love how the committee just is so baffled by the fact that he actually caused a meltdown.
While they're legitimately stumped at how it could have happened, Mr. Burns is like, yes, I get your point. It's time for the bribe. But instead of just giving him a bribe, he presents it as if he's the host of Let's Make a Deal.
You can either have the washer and dryer where the lovely Smithers is standing, or you can trade it all for the box.
The box! We'll take the box! But the other lady, the other part of the commission, is not going to let that slide. She says, no, this is a big problem, and one that you just can't throw money at and make it go away. But then Quimby walks through the room wearing a fur coat that literally has a $5,000 price tag still hanging off of it, and is like, gentlemen, I decided there'll be no investigation. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'll go away.
He walks right out the door.
So it turns out what happened is Homer is going to be required to do college training. He has to get caught up, or it's going to be bad news for Burns. Though Burns isn't worried. He has a feeling they're going to be dropping this investigation.
Click.
And then, unfortunately, the trapdoor in Burns' office opens several feet away from where the committee is actually standing. And Smithers lets them know, sir, the painters had to move your desk.
Oh, yes.
I love all these occasions where Burns' trapdoor fails miserably. It always makes me laugh.
Release the hounds.
So Burns decides to, yet again, visit a familiar home in Springfield. He goes to see the Simpsons, and he's brought along all 5 of his lawyers.
And I love the little exchange they have with Marge asking them to come in. Would you like some marshmallow squares? Please do come in.
Yeah.
And they'll have to confer with each other before they say whether or not Burns can go in.
I love just the joke about that. Yeah, they all whisper in each other's ears before they agree. But I also love that it was an offer of tea and marshmallow squares, which we know Marge is famous for from the money that the town lost without her revenue in the town's bake sale back in Marge and Jane's.
Yeah. You know it's important when we both wrote the same note down, too.
This is where Burns explains to Homer that he is going to have to go back to college. And I love when Bart hears this. He's like, college? Ha! Barber or clown?
Which he kind of does both, doesn't he?
I think he does eventually, yeah. Homer's future now depends on him completing Nuclear Physics 101. And one more thing.
You must find the Jade Monkey before the next full moon.
Actually, sir, we found the Jade Monkey. It was in your glove compartment.
And the road maps and ice scraper?
Yes, sir. They were in there too, sir.
Excellent. It's all falling into place.
That's just fucking outlandish Burns, but it's so funny.
I want to see that storyline. I mean, Carolyn talked about it in the last couple episodes where there's so many, like, good tangents that have, like, these promising stories that you kind of wish you could see all the time.
That could make an entirely great spin-off show if they just went through and made actual stories out of all these stupid one-offs that they do in the series that are just fantastic.
You could call it everything but The Simpsons, because it's literally all the other characters that do that all the time.
In a somewhat stretch of a roundabout way, they're kind of doing that for the Hey Arnold movie that's coming up, because in the movie, Arnold and I assume his friends are going to be traveling to the jungle. Because if you recall in that series, Arnold's parents had actually gone to the jungle on like some sort of, I think they're archaeologists or something like that. And they basically, that's why he ended up living with his grandparents. And this movie is now going to have him searching for his parents in the jungle, which is kind of the same concept of showing this really rad story that you only barely alluded to back in the original series.
It's not a Simpsons did it moment, because you're going to find out that Arnold's parents were both super hardcore drug addicts that OD'd and died, and like the grandparents just made up this elaborate story.
It's like when your parents tell you that your pets went to the farm.
Yeah, exactly. Like
yes, your parents were in the jungle, kids.
You know how Arnold's grandparents are, though? I mean, it makes sense, right?
That's actually, they did a lot to Arnold for the greater good in a lot of ways, especially the grandma in that show is one of my absolute favorites. But hey,
the grandfather's hilarious, dude. What are you talking about?
We're talking about another animated show that we're both
that has grandparents
so
in it.
Let's get back to it. Marge is actually really excited for Homer. He's got this opportunity to go back to school, and Homer's excited too because he always wanted to be in college, but unfortunately fate got in the way. We see a flashback where Homer was visiting with his guidance counselor, who is essentially telling him he's a shoo-in for college. He just has to sign this paperwork.
Just sign the line. It's like free ride, you're guessing.
At that very moment, through the window, Homer happens to see a dog with a ham, and he starts laughing and says, "This I gotta see." And in the next moment, we see Homer fighting with said dog over said ham, and the guidance counselor looks disappointed as he crumples up Homer's application and tosses it in the trash.
And I really like the transition they do here, because they flash back to modern times with a very similar looking trash can, but it's full of papers now, and it's in the Simpsons kitchen instead. I really like that transition right there.
That's beautiful. I had that written down as well. And I also like the scene that it jumps into, because what's going on is Homer is struggling with these applications, especially the essays. So Lisa tries to help. She asks, "What are your 3 favorite books and how have they influenced you?" And Homer replies,
"Is TV Guide a book?"
"Nope."
"Son of Sniglet?"
"No."
"Katharine Hepburn's Me?"
And Lisa gives just another disappointing no, because Homer clearly hasn't read anything.
I suck.
I think this would be a good time to announce that we're going to be doing a guest spot on the Throwdown Thursday podcast with Patsy the Angry Nerd and all of their great co-hosts. We're going to be talking about, first of all, we get to talk about the character Ralph Wiggum, which, I mean, how great is that? He's one of our favorites. Then, in part 2, we're actually going to be going over some of the theories, such as Magical Maggie, which we may have brought to the table, and the idea that all of the Simpsons might be very intelligent, but they hide it due to the fact that Lisa is so miserable.
There's a lot of interesting things to talk about in that interview as well. We haven't recorded it yet, but my mind's already churning a whole lot. And a lot of it's because of conversations we've had with Carolyn Omine and Michael Price, where you get a little inside information on the mindset of certain characters, just briefly from writers' perspectives. And it's really got my mind churning on things we could actually discuss.
Yeah, it's almost like getting a little peek behind the curtain, which is always a lot of fun in the Wizard of Oz sense, I mean.
We got those books for dummies on certain characters already, so we're going to ace this test.
Damn right. We're going to do an all-night cram session, and that always works, right?
Cram? What are you talking about? I'm just going to wing it.
One way or the other, Homer manages to find some inspiration for his college entrance essays. We see him finishing up as he's writing, and that was the most I've ever thrown up.
And it changed my life forever.
I love Bart's reaction here. "You the man, Homer." Homer completes his essay with adding a picture of himself. You've probably all seen it. I send it to many of you if I notice it's your birthday. It's Homer stuffing an entire cake in his mouth, with Marge just looking disappointed in the background. And Bart's a little concerned. He's like, maybe you should pick a different picture. The picture doesn't matter. It's not like that's going to affect anything.
It doesn't make any difference.
We see at the college acceptance board, there's 2 people looking at all of the entrance essays, and they get to Homer's, they look at the picture, and one of them says, "Wow, he looks crazy."
Agreed. Reading this essay would just waste valuable time. Which, this is 1993 again, but this is such an important lesson for young people out there and everybody in general, because this is before Facebook and everything, and now literally companies will go through your Facebook profile to see if there's any pictures like this on there, and that will determine a lot into whether or not they're actually going to hire you. So I think it's really funny that, again, we kind of have a little Simpsons did it moment, so to speak.
Yeah, I like that in a roundabout way. That's a good message for everyone. If you're not careful and you fuck around too much, you're going to end up unemployable and have to do something like host a podcast and live on ramen or something.
Shh, don't give away our trade secrets.
Back at the Simpsons' home, I love this. Bart's watching TV, and there's an ad for a Worcestershire sauce soft drink. Steaky.
Ah, steaky.
And I think this this is probably just really funny in general, but it does kind of hold a special place in my heart in a twisted sort of good memory because I love pranks, and this is one that was successfully pulled on me. When I was like 8 or 9, we were having a 4th of July barbecue. You know, we cooked out and we're lighting fireworks and shit. And I probably was throwing black cats at people because I was a little shithead, and that's, you know, probably what I was doing. Not in like a Nelson way, but more of a Bart way. Like, I wasn't a bully, but at the same time, I loved a good prank. And some people thought I would take it too far, which, I mean, what's that?
Flash forward to college Miles, who's hitting Roman candles with freaking golf clubs at people.
Those things hit and they go out. It's not even that big of a deal. And everyone should know stop, drop, and roll in case shit goes south.
Duck and cover.
It's the secret to life. But regardless, I did get back and it got me good. They had managed to pour a good amount of this awful, awful Worcestershire sauce in my root beer. And boy, did I take a big fucking gulp of that son of a bitch. And I will never to this day be able to smell that damn sauce without having that memory and also a slightly upset tummy.
And what did Miles learn from this little prank? He learned that years later, when he needed to get back at somebody, he could fill their Corona with pee and get them to drink it, and they wouldn't notice the difference. He actually learned something from the incident and used it to better himself later on in life.
Yeah, shit got crazy. Alcohol's a hell of a drug. So Bart is watching this terrible soda commercial, but Homer rushes in and is like, sorry, boy, I've got to watch this important college program. And he turns on the very much B-movie School of Hard Knockers. And I want to say this, back to Conan and the writing room. This is pretty much the entire inspiration for this episode. Essentially, after 1978, when Animal House came out, there is a rise of popularity of all these very raunchy comedies that all took place on college campuses. If you have ever subscribed to Comedy Central and had that on at anywhere between like midnight and 6 a.m., you know exactly what I'm talking about. They're, you know, full of fart jokes and boobs. I love these movies. Who wouldn't? Except they're terrible, and they really are pretty much pointless in terms of like character arcs. And if you're not in it for the boobs or the fart jokes, you're probably not in the right place. And Conan just thought it would be hilarious if Homer went to college and his entire knowledge of what college life was like was based on these terrible, shitty Animal House knockoffs. And that's pretty much how this script was born.
And that definitely happens in the scene that we're watching right now, because he's picked a great program to watch to learn about college life and college students.
During the School of Hard Knockers, this is actually a really short but really great parody of like bad B movies too, complete with
Revenge of the Nerds or whatever.
Complete with like terrible exposition, because like right off the bat, the dean is walking with another man in the suit, and the guy's like, "As I'm sure you remember, I'm the president of the United States." And it's like, who would ever need to say that ever? Like, there's no one in the history of ever that was walking next to the president and needed to be reminded that that's who he was walking next to.
It's called exposition, Miles.
And I just thought the way that they mocked this was so perfect in so many ways. I also loved that there was a jock, one of only 2 college archetypes as far as Homer is concerned, has essentially forced a nerd, or a nerdlinger, excuse me, to build him a bra bomb, and he deploys it right on the president and the dean.
This better work, nerdlinger.
The dean is mortified, and he starts to apologize to the president, but the president is actually dancing. Lighten up, Dean. That youngster would make an excellent addition to my cabinet. The Secretary of Partying Down.
Da, 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 da. Yes! Take that, Bitterman!
Homer is so into this movie, he's screaming at the TV, and you can tell he really loves this idea of the jock versus the dean dynamic. Not so much the picking on nerds as much as he just really likes the idea of having to go to war with this dean character. Homer is starting to get responses from all the colleges he's applied to, but it's not going great according to his response, because we hear a bunch of dough, 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 woohoo! A flyer for a hardware store. Dough.
What are you going to do, Homer?
Something I should have done a long time ago.
when he's standing up and looking all prominent and looks like he's got an idea and he's going to pull it off. And then a whole bunch of seconds go by and Marge goes, "You don't know, do you?"
"No, ma'am." He's so cowardly and he literally cowers in that moment. The kids are actually concerned. Like, "What are you going to do, Dad?" And I love Homer's response there. It's fantastic.
What made me laugh a little bit is as he's going through the letters, you don't actually see him open any letter until the flyer. So I'm like, how does he know he actually got rejected? Did they stamp the outside because it was so terrible of an application that they just stamped the outside rejected?
Don't even bother opening it.
Yeah, the only one that he unfolds is the flyer one.
Right. So next up, Homer has to go and break the bad news to Burns that he's not going to get accepted to college. But Burns tells him not to worry. He's actually got a chair at Springfield University. And the chair he has is like this giant Demon King of a chair, which, speaking of, hold on one second. Shout out to Demon King at Finn Balor, one of our listeners from I almost said from Springfield. That's not right.
Yeah.
From Ireland, actually. So great to have him, the Demon King, listening to our show. Really, really happy to have a listener from over there in Ireland. That's great.
The native land.
Cheap pop for everyone. Burns is there to appeal to the board, but they basically say that Homer is such a bad applicant that he is not going to be accepted. So Burns decides he's going to take matters, he's going to do it the old-fashioned way. He gets out a baseball bat, and what seemingly starts just kind of tapping a guy with it, but he's making noises as if he's, like, exerting himself.
What I like is he does this whole bit where he's like, a board chair is a lot like a baseball team. Everyone working together in unison, and this isn't the actual quote. I'm just doing my best Burns impersonation. But then he does this bit where he actually says, that it's not just about one player, and he's walking up behind the guy that said no, and he's like, not some hot dog admissions officer playing by his own rules. And then he's trying to lift the bat to hit him, and he can't quite do it.
And the guy as he's kind of getting tapped, excuse me, what are you doing?
I'm giving you the beating of your life.
Look, stop that. If you wanted him in that badly, why didn't you just say so? And then Burns literally drops to the ground from exhaustion.
He collapses. He's all sprawled out. His eyes look like they're closing. And then he goes, "Smithers, dismember the corpse and send his widow a corsage."
I love that. Burns is so great here. And I'm very excited to know, I don't remember exactly what it is, but I do know from reading that something similar to this is also going to occur in next week's episode, Rosebud. So there's more Burns greatness to come in just one short week.
It might be too much quotation next week. I don't know.
It's going to be tough.
I'm trying to get my Burns practice in right now.
It turns out Burns has the sway to get Homer accepted, and we then get to my absolute favorite scene when Homer receives the good news that he's going to be a college man. He decides he will not need his high school GED anymore, so he literally lights it on fire.
Which he just got a few episodes ago.
I know!
Literally, hold up, what episode was that when he got his... I'm going to backtrack and we're going to figure this out now.
It's within 10 episodes, easy.
Was it Marge and Chains where he got it? No,
it wasn't that.
The front. It was the front.
The front, I think, yeah.
Yeah, that was, 6 episodes ago?
Yeah, it wasn't many. But I love this because he lights the damn thing on fire, but then he starts singing, "I am so smart, I am so smart," and in the background, we see the flames start to spread to the rest of the house. "I am so smart, I am so smart, SMRT. I mean, SMART.
I can tell you, I have quoted this verbatim since I was a child.
This is probably my most overused, and I will not stop ever singing this. I always quote this at people all the fucking time to this day.
Well, my favorite thing to do, especially saying it as an adult, is people, I can sell it to where people legitimately think you fucked up. Where I'll tell you, "I am so smart, SMRT. I mean, SMART," and people just look at you like, "You fucking idiot."
Well, yeah, now it's basically a 15-year-old reference, so a lot of times people don't catch it.
Yeah, and I love it when people catch them off guard, and they look at you, and "You're such an idiot," and I'm like, "It's a Simpsons quote. Get over it."
Yeah, big time. Fun fact from this one, from the director's commentary, this was actually a legit fuck up by Dan Castellaneta when he did the SMRT. That
really?
Was him actually messing it up and then quickly correcting himself. And they like that take so much that it now lives in Simpsons infamy.
That's hilarious. That's great that happened.
On the commentary, they were even saying that a lot of times Dan gets so into character and they don't know if he's just doing it in character or if it's legit happening because it kind of blends in his mind. But Dan will make Homer-like mistakes as Homer that he never makes in other roles. Again, I don't know if that's just him staying in character the whole time or how that exactly works, but I thought that was a fascinating little observation by, I believe that was by David Merkin, if I remember correctly, on the commentary.
No, that's great though. You want such an iconic character to mean something, and if Dan's portraying it that way, then you know, like, he's giving it his all. He's embodying Homer, and you know he gets a free pass. Do that as much as he wants to.
Absolutely, and it makes some great scenes. So good. Next, we're actually on our way to Springfield University for Homer's first day of college. I love when they're going through, there's a plaque and it says Springfield University established 1952, and below that it says, ask about our Latin motto contest.
Yeah. E pluribus anus, right?
Then we, yeah, exactly. Shout out to Dan Harmon. Boom. My first day of college. I wish my father was alive to see this.
Hey!
How long have you been back there?
3 days.
And then as they pull up to the college campus, Homer yells out,
"Nerd!"
Marge thinks this is very, very rude, but Homer has to explain how college works. You see, Marge, there's two types of students, jocks and nerds. As a jock, it's my duty to give these nerds a hard time. And then you see another clearly athletic-based guy, like big, broad dude, and Homer's like, hey, pal, did you get a load of that nerd?
Pardon me?
Like
the nicest person on earth.
So far, college is nothing like Homer has expected, but I'm sure things are going to get better as they head over to the freshman mixer. And immediately, Homer sees an opportunity to spike the punch. I mean, that's going to make him a campus legend, Richie.
Classic movie trope right here. You always spike the punch.
That's happened, like, that always happened in the movies, and I honestly, like, was looking forward to it happening during, like, my middle school and high school dances. That shit never happened, or I wasn't cool enough to be involved, like, either one of the two. But, yeah, definitely it was something that always happened in the movies that I was surprised to find not so much a real thing in real life.
Yeah, until you have a kiddie pool in your apartment full of alcohol.
Yeah, that's different. I mean, when we made it ourselves, like, that was some good trash can punch. But I meant specifically going to an event and spiking the punch. I don't think is that common of a practice, frankly.
No. I think that kiddie pool was fine on its own, and I think that we definitely over-spiked that kiddie pool. If there's one day in my life that I wish I could remember, it was that one.
Who needs memories? College is great.
I can't remember, so that's not helpful.
Yeah. But yeah, so Homer does spike this punch, and immediately, literally the first student that takes a drink runs up to the microphone and is like, attention everyone, somebody spike the punch. And they're all like, boo, and they're like, don't worry, we've alerted all your parents, and they're on their way to pick you up. And for some reason, this erupts in cheers.
They don't have dorm rooms to go to, but...
I was the opposite of that in college, to be fair. But again, I've often admitted I've watched way too much TV when I was a kid. So a lot of my, essentially what I was expecting to happen was based on TV and movies. And I was often disappointed. But we did our best to try to live up to the television and movie college experience as we could while we lived and roomed together in college. Not a lot of going to class, but a lot of great times we can't remember.
Volleyball and T-dunk every night.
Boom. No one knows what T-dunk is, but it's alcohol. Just pretty much everything.
It's a gallon of
alcohol. Yeah.
And that's not an exaggeration.
No. So, speaking of learning from TV and movies, Homer has also got all of his expectations from what the dean is going to be like for TV and movies, and he expects a bitter, crusty old man to take the stage, but this dean is dope as fuck, dude. Like, I would love to hang out with this guy. First of all, he greets everyone with like, hi there, I'm Dean Peterson, but you can call me Bobby. I just want you to know that you're ever feeling stressed out from studying or whatever, I'm always up for some hacky sack, or hey, even if you just want to come by and jam. I used to play bass for the Pretenders.
Then he busts his sweet guitar solo for a second.
I love Homer. I can't wait to take the starch out of that stuffed shirt.
And the guy clearly looks younger than Homer, even.
Yeah. And he's just like the most chill and friendly guy throughout the entire episode, just completely shattering the bitter old man trope of the dean. Even a movie like Old School, I think that was the case.
Oh, but that was such a great dean in Old School.
Yeah, it really was.
Jeremy Piven.
I love Jeremy Piven, but yeah, him playing the asshole is great, but him playing Ari will be forever gold.
What's the difference? And I see what you did there.
Yep, thanks. So Homer's off to attend his first day of class, Nuclear Physics 101. Once again, not a great start because Homer fails to get the opening joke that the professor uses where he talks about how he sees a bunch of new faces, but you know what they say, out with the old, in with the nucleus.
In with the nucleus.
And then to make it worse, you were kind of talking about where Homer's kind of an asshole in this one, and this is probably the best example of that, or one of the best examples of that, when Homer actually just starts obnoxiously laughing because this poor guy dropped all of his notes, which is, you know, is such a pain in the ass when that happens in real life, but Homer just won't shut the fuck up. He's like pointing and making a big scene while all the other students just kind of stare at him awkwardly.
What he's cracking up forever, and he says, "Did you see that jerk?"
And then just to drive it in even further, this professor is so nice. He's offering to stay late after every class to help anybody who wishes to stay with the class material. And I'll admit, this was totally me. If I went to class at all, this was me in a heartbeat, as my grades and dropout rate quickly showed. But yeah, Homer immediately yells out, "Do we have to?"
No.
"Then kiss my curvy butt goodbye." And we get another great window shot where we see Homer outside of the professor's window and he's just chasing squirrels around a tree. Back home, Homer's trying to turn their bedroom into a dorm room. He stole some cinder blocks from a construction site to make shelves, even though Marge assures him they could just buy shelves.
But these didn't cost a thing.
And then you see them pan to a construction site where the contractor has to go tell the architect, "Sir, 6 cinder blocks are missing."
"There will be no hospital then. I'll tell the children."
Over 6 cinder blocks.
Yeah.
Back in class, the professor's explaining what a proton accelerator does, and Homer interrupts and is such a dick again here, talking about how, "Excuse me, I've worked as a nuclear safety technician for 7 years. I think I know a thing or two about a proton accelerator." And he gets invited to demonstrate essentially what he knows, and we see Homer cause his second meltdown of the episode.
But I really like the way they did it, though, because he's like, "Well, please come down and demonstrate it for us." He's like, "Okay." And then it immediately cuts to outside the building, and it's all green coming out of the building.
The second time something that Homer was inside of started glowing heavily.
Which, let's be honest, that proton accelerator the professor had probably had no nuclear material in it, so he probably caused it again.
Maybe that might be what gives Homer his unbreakable nature, is the fact that he is radioactive.
That he has massive amounts of cancer.
I really like the exchange, too, because as he's walking out the door, he just casually says to the people on the cleanup team, "It's in there, boys."
"Thanks, Homer." Like some guys, he didn't even see their faces, but they clearly know who Homer is.
And once again, we get a juxtaposition between what Homer expects the dean to be like and how the dean actually acts, because the dean is about as chill as possible as one could be after having their building essentially destroyed or their class interrupted with a meltdown. He says that no one's blaming you, Homer, but we do think it's going to be better if we paired you up with a tutor. And again, he's just being so nice and helpful, but Homer's cursing his name. "Oh, I'll get you, Dean." And immediately after Homer leaves the office, the phone starts ringing, and you hear Homer on the other end. "Hello, Dean? You're a stupid head."
"Homer, is that you?"
I love that because the dean's looking out the window when he says that, and you can see Homer on a payphone, and he just screams and runs away. So Homer is off to meet his tutors. They're 3 nerds who know everything to know about science, math, and Monty Python movies.
"We are the knights who say, nee, 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 nee,
nee, nee. I love Homer that at the end just says, nee. Another fun fact from the commentary on this one is Conan actually based these three characters on real-life students that lived across the hall while he attended Harvard. In fact, he had some pretty funny stories to say. A lot of their actions and the dialogue came directly from real life of things that they would say as they, talk to each other in the hallways and such.
Including the wallet inspector?
Not the wallet inspector.
No.
We'll get to that. But one of the things that didn't make it into the show that I thought was absolutely hilarious is Conan claims the three people that lived across from him in Harvard actually used to drop phone books on their floor at nighttime because they were trying to get the co-eds that lived down below to come up and get mad at them in their nightgowns.
That sounds like it belongs in a movie.
Yeah. In the commentary, they actually said, I don't know why we didn't put that in the show.
Honestly, it doesn't really seem in character for those three, though.
Yeah, it is
It'd
a
be
little
too
bit
nervous to
too.
do that.
Yeah, it's a little bit too far over the inner or the awkward, sexism line type of thing with what those characters were representing.
Yeah, good old Benjamin, Doug, and Gary.
Back at the Simpsons' home, Homer tells his family about his new friends, and he mentions that he got to play Dungeons and Dragons for 3 hours until I was slain by an elf.
And then Bart gets onto him for being a nerd.
He starts immediately going off about how, Dad, you're hanging out with nerds. What's wrong with you? And when Homer gets defensive and tries to get Marge on his side, she just goes, Homer, they sound like very nice boys, but they're clearly nerds. Homer is having an internal crisis, because after all, as a jock, his sworn enemy is the nerd. But these three guys are so nice to him, and they're trying to help him pass his class, so he doesn't really know what to do. And I actually like this side of Homer's character, because at the end of the day, whenever he gets through his kind of idiotic grudge that he holds because of all the movies he's watched, once he actually gets to know the people, I feel it's to Homer's credit as far as his character goes, that at that point he's starting to put that conflict to side. At least he's going to side with them as opposed to the stupid grudge he's holding, even though it is causing him some emotional conflict.
See, I completely disagree with you in this instance. I think Homer is even more selfish right now because he's been trying to war with the dean and it hasn't been working at all. So instead of paying attention and doing what he's supposed to be doing in the first place, he sees another instance where he can do like the legitimate college experience from the movies you've seen. And that whole thought has consumed him in this episode. Like this isn't about the nerds yet. This is about him wanting to get those movie moments still.
Maybe you're right. I think that Homer's just too dumb. It's like we talked about with Carolyn Omine last week. It's that Homer's never dumber than a dog. And at the end of the day, dogs are loyal to man. So
at the end of the day, but during the day, there's shenanigans to ensue.
It would help if we got things messed up to get to a Simpsons reset, but I think that regardless of where you side with here, Mr. Most Days Off or the Whiz Kid, either way, we know that Homer is going to be getting a lot closer with the nerds. Their friendship is going to evolve from this point forward.
Well, when you die by the elf hand, you do go a little bit closer.
That's true. D&D together, it's a bonding experience.
It was dirty.
Homer decides he'll show his new friends a good time, so he stocks up the car full of beer, loads them up in the car with him, but then Marge is like, hey, if you're going out, you need to take the kids with you.
But Marge, we're a bunch of college dudes trying to have a crazy time.
And the next scene we see Homer, the nerds, and the kids all wearing petting zoo hats, because that was as crazy as it could get.
And they all look really upset except for Lisa.
Well, and then Lisa gets mad at one of the nerds because they ask if they can stop for the bathroom, and even Lisa's like, you just went! The nerd is like, yeah, but somebody walked in and I couldn't go.
Somebody was standing outside the door and I couldn't go. That is annoying, though. Don't do that in the bathroom.
Yeah, but, I mean, still, if you gotta go, you gotta go. Just get the business done. We're not stopping again, that's for damn sure. Homer decides he knows what can fix this dilemma. He's going to get the nerds to pull a prank, because that's what jocks do, I guess. They get some outside help on this one. A professional, a mastermind, an expert pranker.
Ned Flanders?
Exactly. It's going to be a doozy. It is actually Bart Simpson who comes in, and he has a great plan. he proposes that they're going to kidnap the rival school's mascot, Sir Oinks-a-Lot.
Well, and as Homer's talking about the kind of prank he wants to do, he recommends rolling the dean up in a carpet and throwing him off the bridge. And then when they're like, oh, that might not work, and they talk about getting the Springfield A&M mascot, then he's like, and then we roll it up in a carpet and throw it off a bridge.
He gets obsessed with that carpet.
And I had a thought while listening to him talk about this. Maybe Homer doesn't realize that everybody else is breakable, Miles. Maybe he's so used to just recovering from injury so fast. Because there's times where he gets a little morbid in his ideas. So maybe he doesn't understand that, like, when you punch something or throw something off a bridge, it causes harm to the other person.
It's like that book where there's some book I didn't even read, but I know the ending is the kid, like, crushes his pet hamster or rabbit or something. It's Flowers for Algernon, maybe? Long story short, Homer's too dense to realize that he can cause harm to others, is I think what you're trying to get across.
I like how you
here.
said dense, like he's unbreakable. Yes, I just wanted to throw that thought out there.
That's an interesting thought. We'll have to look for more evidence.
Discuss
just like
among
we will
yourselves
with the other theories we propose, like Magical Maggie and Unbreakable Homer and yours, that I'm still not on board with yet. Beastmaster Bart.
You're just not open-minded enough, like the animals that Bart controls.
I like when they actually do kidnap the pig. Homer gets obsessed with pulling the pigtail strays. Curly, straight. Now it's curly. Now it's straight. And the nerds are like, Mr. Simpson, I don't think he likes that. Of course he does. And then the pig bites Homer because he doesn't quit fucking with it.
This pig clearly has a good time, too. Let's be honest.
He probably had fun during the first few of the case of malt liquor, but I think getting to split the whole thing with Homer may have caused some issues, because when they're hiding the pig in the closet, he starts to act funny, and they point out that, yeah, Homer split an entire case of malt liquor with him, and he falls over inside the closet, which spawns one of the funniest Dean lines in the entire episode.
Hello, that sounds like a pig fainting.
What the fuck would you know that for?
That Dean is on point, sir.
This is an awesome Dean, dude. He really is. The Dean obviously has to return the pig to the rival school, and he tells the nerds that he's really sorry, and he's never had to do this before, but he's got no choice. He's gonna have to expel them because that pig's got powerful friends.
You old purr.
Richard Nixon is actually telling them that, because apparently Nixon and that pig are tight.
Go way back.
Homer, of course, feels very guilty about this, because after all, it was his idea, but the nerds assure him that they can fend for themselves out there, and that's when they meet the wallet inspector. I didn't realize that Snake or Jailbird, depending on which side of the coin you're on that debate, whatever you call him, he has taken up a new job, Richie. He's now the official wallet inspector for, I guess, people just getting out of prison. Good for him.
All right. And this is another, 6 episodes in a row that we're getting Snakebird to show up here?
I like Snakebird. It's funny. I also really like that when he does, in fact, get their wallets, he once again is just like, I can't believe that worked. And best yet, Homer from the other side of the school's bar says, "Hey, that's not the wallet inspector."
Yeah, it takes him a few seconds, but then he says it. If Homer recognizes it, it's bad.
Just the fact that that's not a thing and that he's been duped by that con by at least one other person. So Homer feels awful and decides to put the nerds up in the Simpsons' home, but they very quickly become quite the nuisance for the rest of the family. Marge can't even use her phone because they're constantly on the internet. In this case, I think they were getting Star Trek tips or theories or something like that from somewhere.
I thought they were arguing who was better, Picard or...
Yeah, that's what
Kirk?
it was. They were arguing over who is the better captain in Star Trek, I think.
Picard, obviously. Gosh.
But either way, the weird internet sounds were taking up Marge's phone lines, and she didn't care for that. But even worse, something that, frankly, will give me nightmares tonight. The kids are watching Itchy and Scratchy, where it's going to be for the first time ever, the cat's going to get the mouse. And just as it's getting to the big conclusion, the final countdown, literally the fuse is going to light on this big contraption.
My purpose in life is to witness this moment. And Bart and Lisa are holding hands even.
Yes,
like it's such a tender moment. Deal.
And then that's when the TV goes off and you see the nerd standing there holding 2 cords and the kids scream, "Turn it on! Turn it on!"
Turn what on? The rock tumbler or the TV?
The TV! The TV! And they do plug it in, but unfortunately it's just in time to see the end credits and Krusty say,
"Wow! They'll never let us show that again. Not in a million years."
and keep in mind, this was 1993, so it's not the age where you can just get on the internet and look up these lost episodes. If you missed this in that day, you fucking missed it. And that was an awful feeling for a pop culture junkie in the 90s. The kids want the geeks gone, and Marge is not offering any sympathy either. She wants them out of the house too. So Homer decides the only thing to do is to get them back in school. And hey, what's the only answer to a failed zany scheme?
An even zanier scheme.
Why does it have to be zany? Homer decides the best course of action would be to have the nerds save the dean from being hit by a car that he's driving.
And he can't recognize that it's Homer, and that this man clearly has it out for him, but he can recognize a pig fainting rooms away.
Right? Also, just this whole bit of dialogue here is so funny because the nerds are saying, okay, the plan was we're going to jump out and save the dean exactly 3 seconds after Homer crosses the whatever. And one of the nerds is like, wait, do you think we need to account for wind resistance? And of course, after this conversation, 3 seconds has already passed. And we see the dean just get absolutely mauled by Homer's car in a very brutal fashion. But I'm going to say, again, from the commentary, this scene actually went much, much further in its original iteration. In the first version, the dean actually got caught up in the car's axle and would like spin around Looney Tunes style. But it looked very, very, very violent. And it got even worse when Homer came back into frame in reverse to check and see how it went.
Oh my gosh.
So Homer and the nerds do go and visit Dean in the hospital, and Homer does apologize. He says, "Dean, I'm so sorry about the hitting you with the car prank."
Prank?
And all the other pranks were my idea too. And the Dean does appreciate Homer's honesty here, but I love this because, again, the Dean has been so fucking cool. And he goes on to say how proud he is of Homer for his honesty. He's like, maybe I've been a bit of an ogre too.
Yes, you have.
He just says it so deadpan. Yes, you have. And then Dr. Hibbert comes in the room to show the Dean what his new hip is going to look like. And again, this guy's younger than Homer, at least he appears to be, and he's going to have a replacement hip. So that's how serious of an injury this was. And worse, as Dr. Hibbert is demonstrating the hip, the thing snaps in half, and he just laughs it off and says,
"You will have to take it easy on it."
So that brings us to the end of the episode. Everyone's happy and all the loose ends have been resolved.
Absolutely.
And that's when we see Homer back in class and the professor announces, oh yeah, there's that exam he's going to have to take tomorrow. And it pans out and we see Homer in his underwear. And this is a reference to what many psychologists refer to as the test dream, where more commonly you're dreaming that you're in school, in class essentially, and you accidentally went to class without any clothes on. Some believe that it is an indicator that that person is not ready to face whatever challenge he might have before him.
Or they just wanted to see themselves in underwear.
Right, I guess it's kind of funny because there's a lot of little like psychological clues or cues, whatever you want to say, to the people in their underwear thing. Like sometimes you wake up in your underwear, sometimes you're supposed to picture others in their underwear. There's a lot of underwear references in psychology. Psychology is a dirty, dirty subject.
I still have dreams where I'm like back in high school or somewhere, even in college sometimes, and I'm in the halls without. I think I always have a shirt on and no underwear. Like the shirt's just long enough where you think it's going to cover everything, then you have to run and it never quite covers everything.
I don't think I've ever had those dreams, not once in my entire life, but I also am not all that nervous about being naked in front of people, so it's cool. It is what it is. We all have one or the other, and we've probably all seen both at this point. Anyway.
1.5 in my case.
Thank you?
You don't know which part I was talking about.
Yeah, I don't know if you just referenced me having a small dick or an oversized clit, but either way, it's fine.
Or 1.5 balls. I don't know.
So what is Homer going to do for test day? His idea is he's just going to hide under a pile of coats and hope for the best. But the nerds do point out that there is a better way. I think there's really something funny to this, though, before we get on to the nerds' plan, just that Homer's instinct is basically to do the ostrich thing, because unfortunately, I think that goes on in a lot of people's heads. I think many, many times there's this instinct when you face a challenge to just duck and cover and hope things will work out. And the truth of the matter is, without facing them and working hard to resolve them, they're not going to. So...
And a lot of times they're not as bad as your mind builds them up to be either.
Oh, absolutely not. One of my favorite quotes of all time is, "Life is seldom as big a deal as our minds make it out to be." And I think that holds context in almost every situation.
What I love is what Homer says right before burying his head in the sand, so to speak, metaphorically, where he goes, "Oh, I'm going to lose my job because I'm dangerously unqualified."
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's not a good reason at all. How unfair.
How did he get a job at the nuclear power plant without having a GED or a high school diploma? I forgot. I know he just marched in there and demanded it, but did they not check that he had a GED beforehand?
Yeah. Before he actually says the lose his job bit, though, there is a short little montage where the nerds are helping him cram all night, and this is yet another spoof of those shitty B college comedies where there's always a scene where the character fucked around and didn't do anything that he was supposed to through the first 90% of the movie, and then through essentially sheer luck at the end of the film, he studies for like a day and then everything's fine. And this is exactly what happens for Homer up until the very point where he gets his grade and they stamp it with an F.
This is way more realistic.
This is actually what happens, for what it's worth, because I tried this on a couple occasions, and yeah, it does not work the way it does in those movies. And this is absolutely more realistic. Homer gets an F, and it does seem like he's in quite a pickle in terms of his current employment situation.
But doesn't he know a certain group of people that could help him in this?
And the nerds once again come to his aid and let him know that, we could just hack into the school administration and change your grade.
Computers can do that?
Yes, the only problem is the moral dilemma it raises. And Homer's literally kissing the computer while he's talking about the moral dilemma. He does not even hear him. So we're back at the Simpsons home, and Marge cannot even believe that Homer managed to pull off an A+. She's very happy for him, but she does ask, how'd you do that?
Whoa, before that, didn't Homer get on to Bart episodes ago for making all his grades change to an A+ in the Camp Krusty episode? He says, you could have at least made it like a B- or something like that. And Homer's literally guilty of doing the exact same thing.
The apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
It does not.
That's a great observation. I forgot about that, but you are absolutely right. He said that he would have been fine if he would have gone for B's from D's instead of A+.
Yeah, it's much easier, he said, to make a B out of a D.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, totally. That's funny. I love when Homer says, he tries to be all sly and sneaky, and he's like, let's just say I had help from a little magic box.
You changed your grade in the computer.
Doe!
Way to go, Dad!
Bart's so proud. And then this is this great little closing speech, and again, just perfectly spoofs the whole concept of these terrible, terrible B movies that's main characters usually have absolutely no redeemable qualities whatsoever. Homer goes on to say, the important thing to remember is that we all learned a lesson. These guys learned the richness and variety of the world outside of college.
No, he didn't.
Oh. Well, then I learned the real value of college is to study and work hard.
No, you didn't. You only passed because you cheated, which you always taught us was wrong.
True.
I learned that in order for you to set a good example for your son, you're going to take that course over again without cheating.
Aw, Marge, you're worse than that crusty old dean. Well, I guess it's back off to college for me, and that means it's time to... What did I teach you guys?
Party down.
Yes! And we get this classic freeze frame with Homer leaping in the air, excited and his fingers up like an exclamation point to celebrate that he's got his nerd crew to party down in college. And they even go on a little bit further because as the credits roll, they do this great little photo session of all these crazy, zany things that we never actually see Homer and the nerds do while they're in college.
Like pushing the dean into a swimming pool.
Exactly.
And Nixon came back too.
He did, yeah.
What the issue I have with the credits, and it's my biggest issue with the episode, and you're just gonna laugh it off, but there's a scene where Homer's seen in his cap and gown getting his degree. So obviously he passed the class. My issue is, how does he get a degree
off of one class?
Yeah, off of an intro class. 101 is the key for intro class. So he only had to pass one semester to keep his job as a nuclear physicist or whatever the fuck it is he does. Nuclear technician. I was thinking Big Bang for a second. So it only took one class for him to get the
Not
degree
even an entire semester, just literally like seemingly 3 hours. Maybe there's a lab we didn't see. But yeah, it was one class to keep his job.
I feel like Burns just paid off everybody so that he could give him a degree.
That would make a lot of sense.
Excellent.
That does bring us to the end of Homer Goes to College. Richie, was there anything else that you or that book of yours wanted to point out about this episode?
Well, my guidebook, The Simpsons, A Complete Guide to Our Favorite Family, pointed out that cool dean had a Dark Side of the Moon poster on one of his walls. And the only other thing we didn't touch on is the sign outside of Springfield A&M University, their rivals. There was a sign that said, if you were a student here, you'd be home by now. Good old A&M schools, right?
Very much so.
Besides that, I feel like this episode had a lot of great, funny moments until it got to the introduction of the nerds. And I've always really liked the nerds, and I like them when they reappear, and I always fondly remembered them from the episode, but I feel like the story kind of got a little stale with them, and it might be because of what you talked about with the whole movie trope about what you're supposed to do in college, and they were the stereotypical nerds, and maybe that played into it, especially when the lines are so blurred in this day and age. But again, I'm a Burns and Flanders fan, so all the stuff with Burns at the beginning was so damn funny, and I feel like the nerds just kind of stagnated it a little bit, if that makes sense.
I guess, but maybe it's just that I have a more of a fondness for those terrible movies because I've watched so many of those going back to school. When I was like
I've watched a lot of them with you.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I don't know. They're terrible, and their characters are awful, but for some reason, it's probably just the boobs, but I do really like them, and they make me laugh quite often, so I always have a soft spot for movies like American Pie, which is, it's actually a good version example, but even going to some of the ones that got pretty rough in the 80s, like a
Beer Pong Road Trip.
Yeah, I even like that one, frankly, but, they do, I know they're terrible movies, I'm not even trying to defend them, I just also have terrible taste, and that's fine.
I'm not saying I don't enjoy watching those when you just need a movie that has no plot or you don't have to stimulate your brain that much when you just want to laugh a little. I'm just saying for this episode, I just feel like the story just kind of got a little meh after the nerds were introduced.
Fair enough. I will say a few more things about what was going on with Conan O'Brien, because again, this was his last solo credit for writing for The Simpsons. I already mentioned a little bit that he was starting to get calls from the network to take over for David Letterman at this time, but it was actually during this episode that he officially got the call. I believe it was around the time that the show was going through the animation stage, and it got so crazy so fast that he was literally working on The Simpsons during the morning when he got the call, and they were like, we want you to be on Leno tonight to announce it. He had to fly out to New York to get on the show, and then the next morning, he wakes up to find basically every newspaper in the country has printed his face on it, and Conan O'Brien wasn't really that big of a deal at this time. In fact, so much so, he was still listed in the phone book. So that morning, he says that he had just hundreds and hundreds of messages from morning radio DJs who were just having a field day calling up the new night show talk show host.
Was Letterman on NBC back then?
I believe that Letterman was behind. I don't really know exactly how that breaks down, to be honest, but I believe that they were shifting. CBS. I think that he went from NBC to CBS when Conan came in. But honestly, I do not know the history of the night talk show host. I do know there was some moving around. And I also know that there was a big rivalry or competition between Jay Leno and David Letterman for the Tonight Show spot after Carson left. So
yeah,
there was some sort of arrangement. Conan ended up getting the 12:30 spot that he was very happy about. And I also want to say this, a lot of the Simpsons staff, but basically Conan would always be on. Every time that he was working, if they were on break, it didn't matter if he had anyone in the room with him. And sometimes he didn't, so he just did bits for himself, they would say. But he was just constantly doing shtick and just constantly doing Conan. And many people early on realized that he was a very funny guy and very, very talented. And even so much, before he ever announced to anybody that he was in competition for this show, Jim Reardon just one day says, like, yeah, if you had a show, I'd watch it. Like, so basically I say all that just to say that there is always something about Conan, even from early on, that everyone that worked with him had a feeling that he was going to go on and do better things. But to Conan's credit, I thought this was a really cool story. I talked a little bit a couple episodes ago about how there was a big debate about which episode would go on first. A lot of people were fighting for this one to be the opener of the season because they all liked it so much, while Mike Reese and Al Jean were fighting for Homer's Barbershop Quartet, which obviously ended up winning. And again, they argued that it did in fact have a Beatle in it. And of course, it was a very strong episode as well. With that said, though, Conan, while he was proud of this episode and he likes it a lot, he actually was fighting for Rosebud to be the first episode of the season because he felt that was the strongest episode. And fortunately for us, that's going to be the episode we'll be reviewing next week. So on that note, Richie, let's go ahead and get out of here. Richie, is there anything you'd like to plug this week?
As always, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at thewiz_kid23. Also, while you're on Twitter, go ahead and give our show a follow as well. That's at Best Darn Diddly. That's DIDDLY.
And I am at Mr. Most Days Off. That works pretty much everywhere. And if you're not on Twitter or Instagram and you want to contact our show, you can reach us at bestdarndiddly@gmail.com. And of course, you can keep up with everything with the show at bestdarndiddly.com. Other than that, as always, the Wiz Kid and I just want to thank you so much for tuning in to the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. We truly do appreciate you listening. We also look forward to being back with you next week for our review of Rosebud.
And remember, watch out for all those wallet inspectors.
Until next time, be cromulent to each other.
It's a dragon! Disengage! Toaster? They're fighting! I wonder which thing is gonna win.
Well, I know my thing can beat your thing.
Are you serious? A toaster can beat a dragon?
Toasters can get really hot.
Dragons breathe fire.
To see how this and other battles end, find My Thing Can Beat Your Thing on iTunes and Google Play, and send your Thing sightings to @ThingBeatsThing on Twitter. For MTCBYT News, I'm a news person.